Avdiivka seems to be the vocal point of the failed Russian invasion on Ukraine right now. Russian instructor describes the assault methods of Penal Storm Z units in Avdiivka, who take significant losses due to being considered less valuable. He mentions irreversible losses from 40 to 70%. Let's return to some of our sad circumstances. Storm Z assault detachments in the Avdiivka direction and the southern flank of Bakhmut, I don't know about other directions, literally, in just a few days of active operations are ground down to almost zero. On average, the level of irretrievable losses varies between 40 and 70%, and sanitary losses, accordingly, amount to about 60 to 30% of personnel. Firstly, we have the problem of an insufficient level of training of personnel, up to blatant situations when people are dressed and equipped rather poorly, given weapons and sent to the front line because of pressure. Secondly, a critical problem is the lack of proper artillery support for attacks and counterattacks, which in fact turn into those notorious meat assaults. Thirdly, there is a persistent practice of depriving assault detachments of the initiative in choosing options for carrying out the assigned combat mission, even in cases where detachment commanders are able to propose and implement such options. Fourthly, assault troops are often thrown into battle in an emergency mode, practically off the wheels without being introduced to the situation and given time to conduct reconnaissance and establish interaction with adjacent units. Fifthly, the high level of irretrievable losses is due to objective difficulties in evacuating the wounded from the battlefield in conditions of predominance and, even more so, domination of enemy artillery. The combination of the above factors leads to the regular dismantling of assault troops into trash without them achieving any significant results. At the same time, more or less trained detachments also suffer heavy losses, with the only difference being that remnants of such detachments periodically still reach contact line and take at least someone with them. I am aware of the specific attitude of the Army Command towards these detachments, and understand perfectly well that these are essentially penal companies. However, if we put the lyrics aside, we in fact have a frankly irrational use and ineffective waste of a sufficiently motivated human resource. Due to recent gains by the Russian army near Avdiivka, some are mistakenly downplaying the town's strategic importance. People have compared it to Bakhmut and suggested that focusing on Avdiivka is a misguided use of resources. The reality tells a different story. Here's why. First off, Avdiivka has evolved into one of Donbass's most heavily fortified zones between 2014 and 2022. Its defenses feature underground tunnels, concrete bunkers, and a host of other barriers that significantly impede any enemy advance. The resilience of Avdiivka and the resources drained by the Russian army in trying to capture it speaks volumes. It has been a focal point of attack since 2022, yet the actual gains by the invading forces are negligible, given the resources committed. Avdiivka holds strategic value as it offers the Ukrainian army a launching pad for potential offensives toward Donetsk and Makivka. Ukrainian artillery can effectively target key areas in Donetsk, where the enemy's arsenals and troop locations are mixed in with civilian buildings. Losing Avdiivka would create a significant gap in the defensive line, with Pokrovsk being the next significant defensive hub about 40 kilometers away. While there are various fortified villages between Avdiivka and Pokrovsk, the Russian army's strategy often involves overwhelming these positions with sheer force, known colloquially as meat grinder assaults. Russians will have enough armored vehicles to maintain the gradual assault for at least another year. They don't even count people. As soon as the armored vehicles run out, there is a high probability of seeing assault attempts using Roman turtle tactics. Ukraine is at a resource disadvantage, both in terms of personnel and military equipment. The risk of the Russian army making incremental gains using such brutal tactics is a real concern. We're not fear-mongering, nor are we suggesting that Avdiivka is on the brink of capture. We're simply underscoring its strategic importance, which is far different from Bakhmut, which was a recycling point for the PMC Wagner, nothing more. To sum up, the current tally stands at 157 Russian losses versus 8 Ukrainian. Both sides are making limited advancements, only 1 to 2 kilometers deep along the front lines. Ammunition and artillery supplies are paramount for defense in these conditions. According to troops on the ground, cluster munitions are causing significant damage to the invaders, although this has yet to completely lift the pressure. We hope international allies are tuned in to the ongoing situation and prepared to provide the essential resources for defending this critical front. In times like these, an adequate supply of artillery shells could make all the difference. Ukrainian forces continue to hold positions in the east, left bank of Kherson Oblast. Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces control central Krinky, 30 km east of Kherson city and 2 km from the Dnipro River. And one prominent Russian mill blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces marginally expanded their zone of control west of Krinky. Geolocated footage published on October 30th confirms that Russian forces hold positions in forest areas east of Krinky. Multiple Russian sources, including a Wagner Group-affiliated channel, complained about Russian forces' lack of counter-battery, electronic warfare, and command and control capabilities in the Kherson direction, particularly near Krinky. Russian forces continued airstrikes against the west right bank of Kherson Oblast on October 30th. The Ukrainian Southern Operational Command stated that Russian forces used 37 KAB guided bombs to strike the west bank of Kherson Oblast. A Swedish-supplied light tank, the STRV-122, was hit by a Russian ATGM near Avdiivka. When the vehicle was hit, the other STRV-122 behind it retreated to provide fire support. Fortunately, all of the vehicle's crew survived, and the extent of the damage is unknown. This highlights a difference between Russian and Western armored vehicles, as the crews almost always survive in Western armor, which is very unlikely in Russian tanks. It also underscores the respect for human lives by the Ukrainians, while the Russians treat their men as cannon fodder.
Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you wanna support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.